Dragon Ball GT is a series that I have an interesting relationship with. There are these moments when I love it, and then there are times when I don't like it at all. I've talked about Dragon Ball GT multiple times on this channel, but I haven't given it a review from start to finish like I did with Dragon Ball Z. And with the number of comments I get from people who still seem to be a little confused on my stance on GT, this should clear all of that up. So join me as I go through iconic power-ups, unforgettable battles, and a whole lot of nostalgia that's packed into the interesting journey that is Dragon Ball GT. Now, as far as intros go, I don't think GT was bad at all. Following the end of Dragon Ball Z, it makes perfect sense for GT to open with Goku training Oob on the lookout. Now, the Pilaf gang's presence is interesting. By this point in the franchise, they pose no real threat to anyone who's relevant, and this is made clear by how they took their chance to sneak around the lookout. If you're familiar with Dragon Ball, then you know that almost every time we see the Pilaf gang, they're gonna be after the Dragon Balls. And this time it was no different, but the set of Dragon Balls they were going after was. The Black Star Dragon Balls were a set of orbs not created by Kami or Dende, but the nameless Namekian who ended up splitting into Piccolo and Kami. The most obvious question to ask is, what made them different from the Dragon Balls we all know and love? Well, three things really set them apart. The first is that the Black Star Dragon Balls can make any wish. You don't have to deal with Ultimate Shenron saying, "This wish is beyond my power." The second biggest difference is that the Black Star Dragon Balls don't turn to stone after being used, and instead of scattering all over the planet, they scatter all throughout space. And my favorite difference is that after you use these Dragon Balls, if you don't bring them back together on the original planet within 1 year, that planet goes boom. I like that. A lot of stuff happens in Dragon Ball without consequences, and these circumstances were a good way to ensure that these orbs weren't used recklessly, except they were. And not even on purpose. Pilaf wishes Goku was a kid again so he could teach him a lesson, and Ultimate Shenron overhears this and turns Goku into a kid. After learning about the consequences of using the Black Star Dragon Balls, Goku, Trunks, and Goten plan to take a trip into space to gather the Dragon Balls, but with some interference from a disgruntled Pan, Goten gets left behind and essentially replaced by his niece. I understand what GT was going for here. They were trying to follow a blueprint that the original Dragon Ball series laid. A young Goku traveling across the world with his friends in search of the Dragon Balls. And that nostalgia is something that GT relies heavily upon, but we'll get back to that later. Before I get back to GT's story, I just want to note that I wish we could have gotten more adult Goku in the beginning of this show. Goku's training with Oob was finally over, and for once in I don't know how long, I thought we'd finally get to see Goku with his family. When you think about it, that's something we've never really seen. As an adult, if Goku was ever around Gohan, it's because they were in danger. When he was around Goten and Chi-Chi, Gohan was in the realm of the Kais. He's rarely around Chi-Chi. I mean, the only time he had any one-on-one time with her on screen was when he was fighting for his life against the heart virus. Goku only had 3 occasions where he spent quality time with family. The 3 years before the androids arrived, the 10 days before the Cell games, and the 10 years after Boo's defeat. You know what all 3 of those instances have in common? They were either filler or off-screen. On first watch, I thought maybe GT would give us something different. Anyways, while in space, Trunks realizes that one of the jets for the ship just fell off. So they have to make an emergency landing on a planet called Imecka. Now, I actually like the beginning of this section. Goku, Pan, and Trunks make their way to the city, and the locals are quick to notice that something is a little different about them. But you gotta remember, the 3 of them are their own business. They're looking for parts for their ship, but in the meantime, they need a place to rest. And what happens next is something I thought I'd never see in a Dragon Ball series. Goku, Trunks, and Pan check into a hotel. Like, they go to the front desk, get the key, and go to the room, and the first thing Trunks does is flop down in the bed. And naturally, Pan wants to take a bath and Goku wants to eat, but they quickly realize that everything in this hotel room is unreasonably expensive, so they leave. In a franchise where almost everything is out of the ordinary, that is probably the most relatable and realistic thing that's ever happened in Dragon Ball. After they leave the hotel, the 3 Saiyans live on the streets of Imecka, and it's there where they realize how poor some of the Imeckians are living. A little earlier, Trunks saw a television program where the people of Imecka were praising their leader, Don Ki. But he didn't seem like a benevolent leader, he seemed more tyrannical. That was already enough reason for the Saiyans to go against Don Ki, yet once he stole their ship, their meeting was all but assured. But before they made their way to Don Ki's palace, they met a robot in the desert. A robot that would go on to be one of the more important characters in Dragon Ball GT. In his introduction, Giru tried to eat the Dragon Radar and then escape. From the get-go, it was abundantly clear that Giru was no ordinary robot. He wasn't like the other robots on Imecka who simply carried out orders. And because he was different, Goku, Pan, and Trunks decide to keep him until they know what to do with him. As far as them retrieving their ship, it didn't go quite according to plan. They wanted to take it quietly, yet they got their ship and made the most noise possible. As expected, Don Key wasn't too fond of this, but the only way he could retaliate was by making them criminals, because by this point it was obvious that Don Key was pretty weak. The Saiyans went right to his palace and demanded that he make some changes. Of course, he said no. So they easily take on his royal guard, while Goku finally faced the one person on this planet who seemed strong. And personally, I was disappointed. Legic wasn't a real threat. After being pushed back for a little, Goku transforms into a Super Saiyan and beats Legic in 30 seconds.
Come on.
You can't keep hyping up this fighter who doesn't show his face and says the least amount of words possible just for him to lose to Goku's first transformation. But their time on Imecka was short. It was only 5 episodes. They got the parts for their ship, they helped the citizens of Imecka, and had a couple funny moments along the way. Nothing too memorable. It definitely doesn't compare to the starts of Dragon Ball or Dragon Ball Z, but it could have been worse. But unfortunately, it did get worse. The next planet they go to is called Monmasu, which is the Japanese pronunciation for mammoth. And that is fitting because everything on this planet is 10 times bigger than what it would be on Earth. And fun fact, this planet's inhabitants were designed by Akira Toriyama. That's probably the most interesting thing about this planet. The Saiyans have to deal with some bees, Goku makes his way out of a giant's mouth, they get the Dragon Ball, and they leave. The best aspect of this part of the show is that it was only 1 episode. The next planet the 3 Saiyans go to is Gelbo, and this is why I start getting sick of this arc. As far as inhabitants and general living conditions go, Gelbo was the closest planet to Earth that the 3 Saiyans explored. And in search of the Dragon Ball on Gelbo, they learned about these terrible earthquakes that happen frequently because of this monster named Tsunama. Tsunama demands a wife from the people of Gelbo, and if they don't comply, he'll keep causing these terrible earthquakes. Of course, Goku, Trunks, and Pan wouldn't just let the monster do what he wanted, so their way of interfering was dressing Trunks up as a woman to try and trick the monster. Very reminiscent of a time when Goku was dressed up like a girl to trick Oolong when he was posing as a monster. And back in Dragon Ball it was kind of funny, but this time, not so much. And it wasn't just because Tsunama wasn't as funny as Oolong, it was just the fact that the overall scenarios were completely different. When it happened to Goku, he and Bulma were searching for the Dragon Balls to make a small wish, something that wouldn't have an impact on other people. In GT, we have to watch Trunks make a fool of himself for 2 episodes when the entire Earth is on the line. At a certain point, the comedic tone of GT had to change. And as their time on Gelbo was coming to a close, you can feel the tone shifting. One of the citizens of Gelbo was actually in disguise and stole the Dragon Ball Pan had and flew off to another planet. This was the first time it felt like the team had their backs pushed against the wall. Anything that would draw out this journey of gathering the Dragon Balls heightened the chances that the Earth would explode. But this Lord Luud section is arguably the worst animated Dragon Ball content in existence. First, they chased the Dragon Ball thief through a caterpillar-infested planet called Bihei, and after they deal with the overgrown caterpillars, we learned that the Dragon Ball thief has 2 brothers, and those brothers forced the Saiyans from Earth to dance. They even forced Giru to dance, like there was music playing and everything. I thought things were gonna get serious after a Dragon Ball got stolen, but no. The Earth is in danger, so let's make the main cast dance. Listen, I know that that's just the Power Brothers way of fighting, because once they had you dancing, they could do anything they wanted to you. They had full control. But why not just make a genuinely strong character for Goku to fight? In a show that's only 64 episodes, we're 10 episodes deep, and Goku, the main character, hasn't been challenged once. After the Saiyans finally managed to beat the Power Brothers, Pan finds herself in a situation where she and Giru end up on planet Luud alone. And it is on this planet where we get a much better idea of how this whole Luud situation works. There's this guy, Cardinal Muchi, who leads the Luud cult. And I mean, I always thought it was interesting how a guy with the whip was kind of forcing these blind followers to believe in something. Kind of reminds me of, you know what, let's move on. It isn't too long before a sneaky Pan is found and turned into a doll by Luud. Now Goku and Trunks easily deal with Cardinal Muchi, then Cardinal Muchi's whip turned into a full-blown machine, and that's another problem the Saiyans have to deal with. I wouldn't be so against this, but again, the problem is that these aren't serious threats. I have to watch Goku and Trunks fight a whip while a creep is upstairs playing dollhouse with Pan, when I know all of this could have been stopped if just one of either Goku or Trunks transformed into a Super Saiyan. I might be able to understand the excuse that, oh man, they're trying to conserve energy, but not with the situation at hand, and definitely not with Super Saiyan. That's the form we know Goku mastered like 25 years ago. And even if Trunks didn't master it by the time GT started, he had been a Super Saiyan for 20 years too. There's no good reason that they're just messing around with full power Luud in their base forms. To justify the amount of time they were taking with these fights, the enemies should have been much, and I mean much stronger. The Black Star Dragon Ball arc is 16 of the most unproductive episodes for any group of Dragon Ball characters, especially considering what they had the ability to do. Nothing great happened in this arc. The writers tried to make it funny, but it became very apparent that they didn't have the skill to maintain a certain level of humor while also conveying that the characters were in dire straits. But I will give the Black Star Dragon Ball arc this. All of the encounters they had on each individual planet flowed nicely. Everything transitioned well. And this arc also introduced the next and best arc of GT in an effective way. But as an individual arc, I'm not a fan. But I can assure you that I'll have way more positive things to say in the next video. But with that being said, if you enjoyed this video or any of the other ones you've seen on my channel, please leave a like and subscribe. We're on the road to 10,000 subscribers and everyone counts. Again, this is BigTune and thanks for watching. Y'all have a good one.